and only a few of those ideas will be appealing, practical, usable by the problem owner. Then the third phase of the meeting is where the resources feedback their ideas to the problem owner, solutions implementer, and that'll take around about 20 minutes. And then the fourth phase is where the problem owner, solutions implementer chooses 2 or 3 of those ideas that they think have potential or are interesting to them, and applies the NAF rating that we talked about a few minutes ago. That would take somewhere around about 10 minutes. Additional time can be allowed if the idea chosen needs further development work, further clarification, or to improve the NAF rating. Let's look then at the questions process. So the ideas in this particular model are generated through the process where the process leader asks questions designed to generate ideas and solutions. So the questions have to be stimulating and interesting. And the following slides are examples of the kind of questions that the process leader might ask, and a possible sequence in which the questions could be asked. So it is only a possible sequence. There's absolutely no overriding need to stick to the order in which these questions are presented, but it has been found to be quite a useful one. So I said a few minutes ago that we started the meeting by looking at questions that began, if you like, to unpack the nature of the problem. So some very straightforward questions here addressed to the posee by the process leader. What is it about the student's behaviour that causes people or the student themselves a problem? How would you describe the student's behaviour? What else can you say about these problems? So very, you might call them very predictable questions about unpacking the problem. Now the second set of questions here are questions I've called which explore the pupil's rationale or motivation for their behaviour. So the thinking behind these questions is that it's very facilitating to the creative process if you can see the behaviour that's been described, no matter how weird or self-destructive it might be, as having a rationale. And there are different ways of looking at that rationale. So these are questions or examples of that. How might this behaviour make sense to this pupil? Or what need is this behaviour meeting? What problem is the behaviour solving? Or what is the payoff for this problem? So those are all questions that support the idea that the student consciously, or probably more typically unconsciously, is actually getting something out of the misbehaviour, and if we can identify what that is, what that need is, you might say, then we can begin to think of other ways creatively of meeting that need other than through the inappropriate behaviour. And then finally we've got a question that says, what might this pupil be thinking in order for this behaviour to make sense to them? So this is a question with a cognitive behavioural perspective. And if we can speculate about what the student, the pupil might be thinking, then we can perhaps begin the process of helping the student to change those thoughts. And next we've got questions which explore the situations when the problem doesn't occur and asks why. So when in the times that the behaviour problems aren't occurring are probably quite significant clues as to what the poor behaviour is about. So these questions, which will be recognised by people who are familiar with solution-focused or brief therapy, when are the exceptions to this pattern of misbehaviour? When is the behaviour less of a problem, if only a bit? And why might this be? How are the pupil's needs being met at this time? And then we have questions which ask the group to think of success, why this happened, and how it might be developed. So So we have questions like, what strategies have been tried that have had even a small or limited amount of success? What was it about these strategies that gave us this small, maybe even tiny indicator of success that we can build on? And we have questions that encourage the group to further think of solutions rather than problems. Very important question in planning any kind of individual program is to say, what would this pupil be doing if he or she were not engaged in this problem behaviour? We need to be able to think of that, because without that, we haven't really got a target. When the pupil stops doing this inappropriate behaviour, what will they start doing? They don't just do nothing, they don't just operate in a vacuum. What is it that they would start doing? Because when we can think about that, then perhaps we can think about ways of encouraging or promoting that behaviour we want. And very often, of course, in a school situation, that's going to boil down to engagement in the academic task. Another question in the same area, what one thing, if you did it on a regular basis with this pupil or student, might make a difference? Then we've got questions which ask the group to think about small steps towards a possible solution, and again, a well-known question around rating. Where on a scale of 1 to 10 is this pupil or student right now? What would move the pupil or student forward just 1 point? Or to put it another way, what would be the smallest sign of this problem being solved or that you are moving in the right direction? And then again, we've got questions which explore the pupil's strengths, looking at those strengths for ideas that can be developed. So questions like, what are the positive aspects of this pupil? What are their strengths? When is the pupil most successful? When does this pupil feel most included, most a part of the school? And how can we build on these? Worth reminding people at this point that we're not expecting all these questions to be used. The process leader can make a choice as he or she goes through the meeting as to which ones seem appropriate, which ones seem worth using, worth following up, worth pursuing. Talked earlier about the excursion. Here are some typical excursion questions taken from synectics. And the first one is based on the idea of assigning to each member of the group a different profession. Now, the profession could be an airline pilot or a deep sea diver or a chef or a stripper or anything. But you're asking the group members to put themselves into that profession and say, what would a deep sea diver say about this problem? Now, this is going to sound like a very strange technique to many people, but the idea is that if you are feeling that you haven't generated enough ideas in the process so far, that you take this excursion, you put a little distance between yourself and the problem. You're no longer an educationalist, you're now somebody in a different profession with a different way of thinking about the problem, and it just might be that they might have some creative ideas that can contribute to the solutions finding process. And then, similar, what would a famous person, so in this case people are assigned roles of being well-known famous people, and asking the same kind of question, what would they say about this problem? Okay, and the next set of questions which help the group adopt a different perspective on the problem. So, for example, a headline in the local newspaper said, Billy is commended by the local community for what? What would the group think from what they've heard of Billy would be the most likely focus for this article, commending Billy for a positive act in the community? Or, second question, if your life actually depended on finding the positive in this situation, what would you say about it? Or, if a miracle occurred and this pupil suddenly started behaving perfectly, what would it look like? What would it be doing? What would you see? And what if questions. What if this pupil were made head boy? What if this girl won a fashion contest? What kind of possibilities would that open up for us? And then finally, some additional questions. This problem provides us with an opportunity to what? So this is a positive reframing question on the grounds that it's possible to positively reframe any negative situation, that there's potential in any negative situation for something positive to come out of it. And the next one, a strange sounding question again to many people. What could we do to make the problem significantly worse? We call this a paradoxical question, which can be used if the group, again, is stuck trying to find the positives. From the negative, trying to make it worse, which very often might seem a lot easier to do than making it better, might come some positive ideas. And then finally here, we've got a question that says, based on a review of what? A plus will be scored when what? So this is a question, and there are many similar questions designed to develop a very clear method of monitoring and evaluation. How well will we know whether the idea, the plan, when we've got it, has been successful? So that would take us through to phase 3 of the meeting. So we've had phase 1, the problem presentation. We've had phase 2, questions to generate ideas about the problem. Now we're into phase 3 of the meeting, where the ideas are presented to the problem owner solutions implementer. So the process leader now asks the resources to consider what they've written in the out column, to look at their ideas and submit these one at a time. So rather than asking one person to submit all their ideas in one go and then other members of the group feeling that they've had their ideas taken, go around the resource group one at a time, and as the resource person submits the idea, the process leader writes that idea on a whiteboard or a flip chart or something. And during this part of the process, the problem owner can ask for clarification. What do you mean by that? But they don't comment on its appropriateness, so they don't, if you like, kill the creative process by saying, don't think that would work, or try that last week. So clarification, but not implied criticism. So by the end of this phase, the third phase of the meeting, the process leader should have written somewhere around about 30, 40 ideas. So that would be something like 6, 7, 8 ideas from each of the resources, plus any ideas from the process leader or problem owner themselves. So now the solutions implementer, the POSI, is asked to choose a maximum of 3 ideas from the list on the basis, as I said earlier, of their interest or appeal to the POSI. Can I ask again for any elaboration or clarification from the resource who's offered the idea? And then gives each idea the NAF rating. And again, as I've said earlier, if any of the 3 NAF areas have a low rating, then the resource team is asked to go back to that and rework it so it improves the rating in that area. If it's a novelty issue, then they're asked to go back and put a different spin on the idea that raises the novelty. The POSI then has chosen the idea, and the process leader will check with the POSI that they need to put the ideas into practice. Can they walk out of the room and begin to implement the plan? The process leader will then agree appropriate review dates and procedures for how that review will take place. Perhaps in line with the question we talked about earlier, a point will be scored.